Hey guys, today we have a slightly unusual video where we will be comparing the Sony ZV-1 to the Canon M50, including the M50 Mark II. The question of which of these is the best camera for video creation has come up a lot on my channel, and since I published my long-term review of the ZV-1 just last week, now seems the perfect time to answer. But you might notice I'm not actually holding up a Canon M50. In fact, this hand is emptier than the heads of many people in the general public. That is because I found enough reasons to not buy one. So today, I'll be taking you through why I opted for the ZV-1, whether I regret my decision, and most importantly, the fact that I could be a gigantic moron. Totally wrong, and the M50 could still be a great choice for your use case. So stick around if you want to hear my reasoning feature by feature, and if you enjoy this video, then like, subscribe, and let me know any questions or thoughts down in the comments. Thank you, and let's begin. First, a bit of story time. It's 12 months ago, summer 2020, and everybody is wearing masks. Not because they love Slipknot or Mortal Kombat, but sadly because there is a pesky pandemic on the loose. And me? I'm stuck at home, alone in a 40 square meter flat. Not ideal, so I start a YouTube channel. Something productive to do with all the dead time and hopefully a positive creative outlet. Initially, I'm talking about technology, which I also really like, but very quickly I start finding the process of making the videos, videography, getting the right shots, trying to make things look good, is more interesting. I'm developing this passion for it. So maybe I should start making content about that as I'm learning. However, that means suddenly I need a proper camera, because even after just 3 or 4 videos, I'm finding using a smartphone limiting and frustrating. I need something that is beginner friendly so I can pick it up and start making things straight away, but also has enough depth, enough overhead that as I learn more and more, I can tap into those features and keep on upping my game. And that is what narrows things down between the ZV-1 and the M50. Here are the key things that I looked at to make my decision back then, plus the added experience and hindsight that I've got to contribute now. First up was 4K video capability. I wanted something as future-proof as possible because back then, £600 or £700 seemed like a lot of money for a first camera. Nowadays, I may have developed a different problem with large amounts of money in cameras. The ZV-1 gets 3 major advantages when shooting 4K. First, more frame rates. You get up to 30 frames per second in 4K, along with 24 and 25 frames per second. The Canon tops out at 25 frames per second only. Second, and more important, is the crop when shooting 4K. The ZV-1 crops in a little when switching from 1080p to 4K, but the M50, even the Mark II, has a massive crop in of around 1.6 times when using 4K. And that is problematic for vlogging on the M50. Between the crop factor inherent in its sensor size and then the extra 1.6 times crop to shoot 4K, the 15 to 45mm kit lens of the M50 actually has a widest field of view in 4K of around 38mm. Something like this illustration. I thought to myself, I'm going to need a much bigger selfie stick to make this work. And this time, that thought wasn't a euphemism. The third advantage the ZV-1 has in 4K is autofocus. My research back then and a lot of experience subsequently have shown me that Sony are among, if not the best of all the manufacturers for autofocus. Indeed, in good light, the eye tracking of the ZV-1 has a better hit rate than Michael Jackson in the 1980s, plus with less dubious later behavior. The Canon dual pixel autofocus system is also really well regarded, so what's the problem? Well, you don't get it on the M50 in 4K, it's 1080p only. So in 4K you are limited to an inferior contrast-only autofocus system with much greater risk of focus hunting, pulsing, and just generally missing focus. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why is there not a bacon-flavored toothpaste? And also, I'll just shoot in 1080p, so who cares about all these issues with 4K? Which is a fair question. Now, I do think that 4K has some objective advantages compared to 1080p. I'll be making a video on that topic in the future, so stay subscribed to catch it when it arrives. But let's say that you can work just in 1080p. The M50 starts looking much better, right? Well, unfortunately, like my therapy sessions, closure on one problem just leads to another, and this time it's not a childhood phobia of ducks, but instead a problematic recording limit. You see, the M50 can only record video for a maximum of 30 minutes per clip, whereas the ZV-1 has no recording limit. So add a big SD card and some USB power, and the ZV-1 can record as long as you want, pretty much. For me, this is a big issue. Firstly, believe it or not, every time you see 10 minutes of finished product from me, usually that's 60 to 80 minutes of recording time between trying to get multiple takes for the best version and the inevitable screw-ups and outtakes. Second, a limit sucks for event work. If you have something like a wedding, a conference, or a concert, you can bet your ass that most of those things are going to be longer than 30 minutes and will want continuous filming. You can also bet your ass, although maybe it's better to do one buttock per bet, that when the limit kicks in to stop you, you're going to end up missing something important, ruining a really good shot, or getting some other problem. Not cool. Next up is stabilization. Both cameras offer a couple of levels of digital stabilization. But if you want to use the strongest, which is what I would usually recommend for vlogging, then both cameras add an extra stabilization crop. For the ZV-1, that's around 1.25 times. But the M50 has a more substantial 1.4 times crop, on top of that 1.6 times 4K crop. So, the 15 to 45mm kit lens in 4K with the best stabilization will give you a widest field of view equivalent to 54mm. Here is what a 50mm lens field of view looks like at an arm's length vlogging distance, and with a face like this, it's about as desirable as a hot sauce colonoscopy. The other stabilization advantage for the ZV-1 is the option of Catalyst Browse, where you can use gyroscopic data recorded by the camera to get some amazingly smooth results in post-production. Full guides to Catalyst linked below. It's an option I get a lot of use out of, and where the M50 just has no equivalent feature. Form factor was another important consideration. Now, the M50 is pretty damn light and compact, but it still dwarfs the ZV-1. So that smaller size and retractable lens made the ZV-1 a better choice for the camera that I could always fit in a pocket and take everywhere with me. And if you've been enjoying that crazy slow motion we've had in the background, then the ZV-1 has another killer feature. Both cameras can shoot up to 120 frames per second slow motion. But while the ZV-1 does that at 1080p, the M50 is limited to a rather outdated 720p only, which really could be a potential resolution issue. The ZV-1 does even more and makes its slow motion features a slam dunk LeBron James would be proud of, with a high frame rate mode that allows bursts of ultra slow motion in 1080p up to an insane 1000 frames per second. There's detailed guides to all this in the description, but the short version is the ZV-1 is one of the best options for unique slow motion shots of any camera at any price point right now. The last major thing I considered was color options. The ZV-1 offers all the same color profiles as the professional grade full frame Sony models, including Cine, S-Log, and my most used HLG. The M50 lacks the same range of options. No super flat C-Log to match the S-Log, and no HLG. You might have picked up on this, but I really like the colors of HLG straight out of camera, and I often don't do much, if any, grading, so for me, that would be a big miss. Plus, HLG allows you to shoot high dynamic range video, so if I wanted to do that in the future, I have the option with the ZV-1, no such option with the M50. Now for the most fun part, why I might be a total idiot. Now, I know what you're thinking, that's a big subject. So we're gonna limit it to why I might be an idiot for not purchasing the M50. Or to put it another way, the M50 still has lots of positives to offer, so it could still be a great choice for you. Here is why. With the M50, you get an electronic viewfinder. I never use one, even on my larger cameras, but that's personal preference, and a lot of people really like having one. You also get a flash. Again, not something I use, but if you do, and especially if you do portrait or other types of photography, that's a very handy addition you do not get with the ZV-1. The M50 also has interchangeable lenses. Now, it's not the perfect lens ecosystem, especially the EFM native lenses, but you definitely get a lot more ability to change the looks you can achieve compared to the ZV-1, albeit at much more cost to get all those lenses as well. There's also a lot of people who really like the so-called Canon colors. So while you might not get a flat log profile or a HDR-capable HLG profile, it could be those Canon colors make stuff straight out of camera really nice. And last but not least, the M50 also has more appealing ergonomics. While it's less pocketable than the ZV-1, it is clearly a nicer shape for the human hand. Plus, the Canon touchscreens actually do useful stuff, like navigating menus. Sony, take note, it's almost as if proper touchscreens can be helpful. So where does that leave us? Well, if you're focused on video, especially 4K, vlogging, and portability is also important, then I'd say the ZV-1 is the better choice. And for my use case, I would pick it again every single time. But if you genuinely only need 1080p, you do a lot more photography than I do, you don't mind investing in more lenses to get more looks, and you're sure that you won't miss the superior slow motion or color profiles, then the M50 could still do a great job for you. But what the hell do I know? Opinions are like uncles. Everybody has them, but not all of them are sensible. And also, some people don't have them. So let me know your opinions down in the comments. And on that confusing revelation, we are done for today. Massive thank you for watching, especially making it all the way to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, then like and subscribe, and most importantly, until next time, take it easy.